The time is 6:47 a.m., October 25, 1944. Dawn is breaking over the Philippine Sea, off the island of Samar. Aboard the USS St. Lo a small American escort carrier, a lookout squints through his binoculars. Rain squalls obscure the horizon, but then, through a gap in the gray, he sees them. Pagoda-style masts, unmistakable. He grabs the voice tube, his whisper trembling. They're not supposed to be here. Within seconds, the sea erupts. Geysers of water, impossibly tall, bracket the tiny American ships. These aren't mortar or bombs. They're 18-inch naval shells, each the weight of a small car, fired from a distance of nearly 20 miles. On the thin flight decks of the escort carriers, men are thrown from their feet. Below, pilots in their bunks are jolted awake, scrambling for their flight gear in nothing but shirt sleeves and shorts. The steel plates of their ships, never meant for this kind of punishment, hum and shudder with each near miss. Out on the horizon, the source of their terror emerges from the mist, a wall of steel. 4 battleships, including the monstrous Yamato *, the largest battleship ever built. 8 cruisers, 11 destroyers. It's the main body of the Imperial Japanese Navy's center force. And it has just stumbled upon Taffy 3, a handful of slow, unarmored jeep carriers, and their screen of destroyers and even smaller destroyer escorts. It's a bulldog facing a pack of wolves. The American ships are designed to hunt submarines and support troops ashore, not to fight battleships. Their largest guns are 5-inch pea shooters against the armored fortresses now bearing down on them. A single hit from the Yamato could tear one of these carriers in half. The mismatch is absolute, a death sentence written in smoke and steel. To understand how this nightmare became reality, we need to widen the lens. Just days earlier, General Douglas MacArthur had dramatically waded ashore at Leyte, fulfilling his promise to return to the Philippines. On the beaches and inland, tens of thousands of American soldiers were fighting to establish a foothold. Their lives and the lives of countless Filipino civilians caught in the crossfire depended entirely on the U.S. Navy controlling the seas around them. Without that control, the invasion force would be cut off, starved, and annihilated. For Japan, this was the last desperate roll of the dice. Their plan, codenamed Sho-Go, or Victory Operation, was a massive, complex gamble designed to crush the American landing. It was a 3-pronged attack. In the south, Vice Admiral Shoshi Nishimura's force would charge through the Surigao Strait. In the center, Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita would lead the most powerful surface fleet. Japan had left the one now off Samar sailing through the San Bernardino Strait to fall upon the unprotected American transports in Leyte Gulf. And to the north, Admiral Juzaburo Ozawa commanded Japan's remaining aircraft carriers. But these carriers were a phantom menace, with barely any planes or trained pilots left. Their mission was not to fight, but to be a sacrificial bait, to lure the main American fleet away. The American command structure, unfortunately, played right into their hands. The U.S. Navy was split. Admiral Thomas Kinkaid's 7th Fleet was directly responsible for protecting MacArthur's invasion. Part of his fleet, a line of old but powerful battleships under Admiral Jesse Oldendorf, was guarding the southern approach at Surigao Strait. Meanwhile, the muscle of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, Admiral William Bull Halsey's mighty 3rd Fleet with its fast carriers and modern battleships, patrolled to the north, tasked with destroying any major Japanese naval threat. Here, a critical misunderstanding unfolds. Halsey, aggressive and eager to sink the Japanese carriers, receives reports of Ozawa's northern decoy force. Believing it to be the primary threat, he makes a fateful decision. He will take his entire fleet, all of it, and race north to destroy it. He signals his intentions, but in the fog of war, Kinkaid believes Halsey has left a powerful task force behind to guard the San Bernardino Strait, the central gateway to Leyte Gulf. But Halsey hasn't. The gate is wide open. And so the stage is set for a tragedy of errors. In the Surigao Strait, Oldendorf's battleships are about to decisively cross the T-On Nishimura southern force in a classic naval execution. Far to the north, Halsey is chasing a ghost, pulling the guardians of the strait hundreds of miles away from their post. And through that unguarded door has slipped Kurita's center force, battered from earlier air attacks but still overwhelmingly powerful. Now, sailing into the dawn, they find themselves staring not at the American battle line they expected, but at a thin gray line of ships utterly unprepared for what is to come. For Rear Admiral Clifton Sprague and the men of Taffy 3, the impossible is about to be asked of them. October 24th dawns, a day that will feel like an eternity. As Admiral Kurita's massive center force steams through the narrow Palawan Passage under the cover of darkness, two shadows detach from the depths. The American submarines Darter and Dace are waiting. Torpedoes hiss through the water. The first strikes are devastating. Kurita's flagship, the heavy cruiser Otago, is hit and sinks so fast he has to swim for his life. Her sister ship Maya follows her to the bottom. Another cruiser Takao is crippled and forced to turn back. In the first hours of the battle, Kurita has lost two of his best heavy cruisers, a third is out of the fight, and he's been forced to transfer his flag to the battleship Yamato. Lesser commanders might have retreated. But Kurita, grim-faced and driven, pushes on. His objective remains Leyte Gulf. The sun climbs higher, and with it, a new threat appears. As the center force enters the Sibian Sea, the sky darkens with American aircraft. Wave after wave, launched from Admiral Halsey's Third Fleet carriers, descend like a swarm of angry hornets. They ignore the other ships, concentrating their fury on a single, titanic target. The super battleship Musashi, Yamato's sister ship, the most powerful battleship ever built. For hours, she endures a relentless pounding. Bombs shred her superstructure, torpedoes tear open her hull. She absorbs an incredible amount of punishment, her anti-aircraft guns blazing defiantly until they fall silent. But there's a limit even for a giant. Listing heavily, wreathed in smoke and fire, Musashi finally capsizes and slips beneath the waves, taking over 1,000 of her crew with her. The spectacle is horrifying, and it seems to break Kurita's resolve. He orders his battered fleet to reverse course, appearing to retreat. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles to the north, another drama is unfolding. Admiral Ozawa's northern force, a decoy fleet of carriers with almost no planes, deliberately reveals itself. It's the bait for Halsey's powerful Third Fleet. Ozawa launches his handful of aircraft, a pathetic gesture designed to be seen. Halsey, a carrier admiral through and through, sees the Japanese carriers and believes he's found the main enemy fleet. The temptation is irresistible. Convinced the center force is retreating and broken, he makes a fateful decision. He will take his entire force, all his fast carriers, all his powerful new battleships, and race north to annihilate Ozawa. This is where communication begins to fray. Down south, Admiral Kincaid, commanding the invasion fleet, is monitoring the reports. He intercepts a message from Halsey about forming a new battle line. Task Force 34 to guard the San Bernardino Strait. Kincaid assumes this force has been detached and is standing guard. But for Halsey, Task Force 34 was just a plan, a contingency. He never actually formed it. In his mind, the job was to sink carriers. Every ship he has is now steaming north at flank speed, leaving the San Bernardino Strait completely unguarded. As night falls on the 24th, the focus shifts to the south, to the Surigao Strait. Admiral Nishimura's southern force steams confidently into the narrow channel, a direct route to Leyte Gulf. He doesn't know he's sailing into the most perfectly laid trap in naval history. Admiral Oldendorf's 7th Fleet Support Force is waiting. First, Nishimura runs a gauntlet of American PT boats, their torpedoes creating a chaotic lattice of wakes in the dark water. Then come the destroyers, dashing in from both sides of the strait, launching waves of torpedoes that rip into the Japanese column. Nishimura's flagship, the Yamashiro, is hit but plows onward. But the worst is yet to come. At the far end of the strait, Oldendorf has arrayed his old battleships, many of them survivors of Pearl Harbor, in a classic battle line, crossing Nishimura's T. It is a textbook naval maneuver that allows every one of Oldendorf's main guns to bear down on the approaching enemy, who can only reply with their forward turrets. The pre-dawn hours of October 25th erupt in a cataclysm of fire and steel. Oldendorf gives the order, and the night is torn apart by the flash of heavy guns. Shells rain down on Nishimura's doomed force. It's not a battle. It's a slaughter. Within minutes, the southern force is shattered, annihilated in a storm of gunfire and explosions. The southern door to Leyte Gulf has been slammed shut. But as Oldendorf's guns fall silent over the wreckage-strewn strait, something else is happening in the darkness. Back in the Sibian Sea, Admiral Kurita, having absorbed the blows and feigned retreat, had turned his fleet around once more. Under the cover of night, undetected and unopposed, The still powerful center force slips through the now completely unguarded San Bernardino Strait and enters the Philippine Sea. The sun is about to rise, and the bows of the Yamato and her escorts are pointed directly at the vulnerable heart of the American invasion fleet. The horizon isn't empty anymore. It's filled with monsters. Pagoda masts, the unmistakable silhouettes of Japanese battleships, Yamato, Nagato, Congo-class behemoths, heavy cruisers bristling with guns. This is Admiral Kurita's center force, the most powerful surface fleet left in the Imperial Japanese Navy, and it has just stumbled upon Taffy 3. Rear Admiral Clifton Sprague can't believe his eyes. His command? 6 tiny escort carriers, glorified cargo ships with flight decks. His screen? 3 destroyers and 4 even smaller destroyer escorts. They call them tin cans. Against the steel titans bearing down on them, they might as well be. There's no time for strategy, no time for anything but survival. Rain squalls lash the sea, a temporary shield. The air crackles, thick with the smell of cordite and the gut-wrenching metallic scream of shells tearing overhead. On the flight decks, it's chaos. Pilots scramble into Avengers and Wildcats. There's no time to arm bombs, no time to load armor-piercing rounds. They launch with whatever they have, sometimes nothing at all, just the desperate hope of distracting the enemy. All hands prepare for a surface action against a greatly superior enemy force. Captain Ernest Evans cuts through the din aboard the USS Johnston. He gives the order, flank speed. Left full rudder. He's not running. He's charging, alone. A single destroyer racing toward a line of heavy cruisers, its 5-inch guns spitting defiance. Johnston unleashes a spread of torpedoes, a desperate prayer sent across the churning water. Seeing their lead, the destroyer's hull and Heermen turn to follow, plunging headfirst into a cauldron of shell splashes, geysers of water erupting around them like a forest of death. Then comes the Samuel B. Roberts, a destroyer escort that would earn the nickname the D that fought like a battleship. Her guns chatter relentlessly, firing so fast the barrels begin to glow cherry red. She weaves through smoke and chaos, a gnat stinging a giant, her crew knowing every second they survive is a second bought for the carriers. Above, the air war is just as desperate. Pilots, with empty bomb bays, perform dummy attack runs, diving straight at the Japanese ships to draw their anti-aircraft fire. They strafe bridges with machine guns, drop depth charges set for shallow detonation to create spray, anything to disrupt the gunner's aim. One pilot, out of ammunition, is said to have thrown a Coke bottle from his cockpit. Smoke screens blossom across the water, a fragile curtain laid by the destroyers and planes, trying to hide the vulnerable carriers. Aboard his flagship Yamato, Admiral Kurita is astonished. This is not the reaction he expected. The ferocity of the American resistance is unbelievable. Are these fleet carriers? Is this Halsey's third fleet? The smoke, the relentless air attacks, the suicidal charges of the destroyers, it feels like a trap. He can't see through the squalls in the artificial fog. His lookouts report torpedoes in the water from every direction. Confusion begins to ripple through the Japanese line, but the cost is brutal. The escort carrier Gambier Bay, unable to escape the shelling, shudders under repeated hits. She slows, lists, and finally succumbs, the first U.S. carrier ever sunk by naval gunfire. Planes, fuel, and ammunition spent, ditch in the sea beside their carriers, pilots hoping for rescue that may never come. Tin cans, one by one, are overwhelmed. The USS Johnston, after absorbing catastrophic damage, vanishes in a violent explosion. The Hull and Samuel B. Roberts fight until they can fight no more. Their guns silenced only when they slip beneath the waves. Through the chaos, radio fragments paint a picture of sheer courage. I have a hole in my port side big enough to drive a truck through. Target is the Jap cruiser on the left. Let's get him. Sprague's voice, strained but unbroken, directs his battered flock. Every shell that misses, every minute the Japanese are delayed, is a small victory. The American formation is shattered, burning, and bleeding, but it refuses to break. They are holding the line. Kurita's massive force, the hammer meant to crush the American landings, is being held at bay by a handful of ships that have no right to still be fighting. The tension is a physical thing, stretched to its absolute limit as the Japanese flagship begins flashing signals. Kurita wavers, his certainty eroded by the sheer, unbelievable valor of Taffy 3. The smoke clears. The thunder of naval guns fades into an unsettling quiet. Off the coast of Samar, Admiral Kurita's mighty battleships, having come so close to shattering the American landings, turned back. On the decks of the battered American escort carriers, sailors watched them go, a ghost fleet disappearing into the haze. It's a moment of disbelief, of surreal relief. The sea is a graveyard of drifting oil, burning timber, and the ghosts of ships like the Gambier Bay and the Johnston. But the fight isn't over, it's just shifting. Hundreds of miles to the north, off Cape Engaño, the second act is reaching its climax. This is Admiral Ozawa's decoy force, the sacrificial lamb of the Japanese plan. Here sails the Zoikaku, the last proud survivor of the 6 carriers that struck Pearl Harbor. Alongside her are the light carriers Kyudos, Chudosyoda, and Zuiho. Their flight decks are nearly empty, their pilots a handful of veterans and hastily trained rookies. They launch their final defiant strikes, a few dozen planes against an entire armada. It's a gesture, a warrior's farewell. And then the storm arrives. Admiral Halsey's Task Force 38, the most powerful carrier force on the planet, falls upon them. The sky fills with the graceful, deadly arcs of Helldiver dive bombers. Avenger torpedo planes drop their deadly fish, streaking through the water with cold precision. Explosions rip across Ozawa's ships. Flight decks, once the launch pad for Japan's naval might, erupt in flame and steel. The Zuikaku, a legend of the Pacific War, is hit again and again, listing heavily, her fate sealed. One by one, the carriers are overwhelmed, consumed by fire and the sea. But as Halsey is achieving this decisive victory in the north, a desperate question rattles the airwaves from the south. A message arrives from Admiral Nimitz in Pearl Harbor. It reads, where is Task Force 34? The world wonders, that last phrase, the world wonders, was just padding added by a communications officer to confuse enemy codebreakers. But to Halsey, it reads like a stinging public rebuke. Where Asterisk was Asterisk, his powerful battleship force that was supposed to be guarding the landing beaches? He had taken it north, chasing Ozawa's decoys. The realization hits hard. He has fallen for the trap. Belatedly, furiously, Halsey turns his fleet south, but it's too late to re-engage Kurita. It's a classic example of the fog of war, where communication breakdowns and command decisions made under immense pressure shape the course of battle. Just as the American sailors think they have weathered the worst, a new chilling terror appears in the sky. Off Samar, where the escort carriers are still tending to their wounds, the first organized kamikaze attacks begin. A Japanese Zero fighter plane peels off from its formation. But it's not strafing, it's not dropping a bomb. It's diving straight down in an unnatural, unwavering glide, deliberately aimed at the flight deck of the escort carrier St. Lo. There's a stunned silence as the plane slams into the ship, disappearing into its structure. A heartbeat later, a catastrophic explosion erupts from below decks. The carrier's own bomb and torpedo magazine has been hit. Flames and smoke pour into the sky. The St. Lo, mortally wounded, begins to sink within minutes. For the sailors watching from other ships, it's a moment of sheer horror. This isn't just a desperate act. It's a calculated tactic, a new weapon born from desperation. The emotional landscape of the battle has been irrevocably altered. On American ships, exhausted sailors now scan the skies with a new kind of dread, watching for that deliberate, final dive. In airbases across the Philippines, young Japanese aviators are writing their farewell notes, tying hachimaki headbands around their foreheads, and preparing to become human missiles. Commanders on both sides are forced to absorb this terrible new reality. The rules of engagement have changed forever. As the day ends, the Battle of Leyte Gulf draws to a close across a vast, scarred seascape. In the north, Japanese carriers are burning wrecks, sliding beneath the waves off Cape Engaño. To the south, in the Sibuyan Sea and Surigao Strait, the hulks of battleships and cruisers settle on the ocean floor. And around Samar, the sea itself is slick with oil, debris, and the undeniable residue of both immense courage and devastating loss. A testament to the brutal, chaotic, and final turning point of the war in the Pacific. As the smoke begins to clear over Leyte Gulf, the true cost of the battle comes into view. The sea, once churned by shells and torpedoes, is now a graveyard. Rescue nets pull oil-blackened sailors from the water, survivors of a naval clash unlike any other in history. On the shores of Leyte, American beachheads hold firm, secured at an immense price. This wasn't just a victory, it was an annihilation. The Imperial Japanese Navy's carrier arm, once the terror of the Pacific, was effectively erased. The super battleship Musashi, a symbol of Japan's naval might, lies at the bottom of the Sabyan Sea. Joining her are the battleships Fuso and Yamashiro, along with a fleet of heavy cruisers scattered across the ocean floor. Japan was already desperately short on fuel and experienced pilots. Now, with its carriers gone, those remaining resources were rendered almost useless. The Battle of Leyte Gulf broke the back of Japanese naval power. By severing the Philippines, the Allies choked off the vital oil supply lines from the south. The surviving behemoths of the Japanese fleet, ships that had once projected power across the Pacific, were now reduced to little more than floating fortresses, trapped in their home ports. When the mighty Yamato would sail again, it wouldn't be for victory, but on a final one-way mission. The American victory was not without its own heavy toll. Off Samar, the heroic tin can destroyers and their escort carrier companions fought with unimaginable courage, but paid dearly. The USS Johnston, Hull, and Samuel B. Roberts were lost, along with the escort carrier Gambier Bay. The USS St. Lo became the first major warship sunk by a deliberate kamikaze attack, a terrifying new tactic born from desperation. For the Filipino civilians on Leyte, the sight of the horizon burning was a terrifying spectacle, the simultaneous arrival of their liberation and utter devastation. In the aftermath, the principal figures were left to reckon with their choices. Admiral Kurita survived, forever haunted by his decision to turn back when victory seemed within his grasp. Admiral Halsey would spend the rest of his life defending his pursuit of Ozawa's decoy carriers. The names of Admiral Sprague and Commander Evans would be immortalized in citations for valor, words that still carry the weight of their sacrifice. And the Zuikaku, the last survivor of the Pearl Harbor attack fleet, went down fighting, her deck adorned with rising sun flags as American bombs rained down. The Battle of Leyte Gulf wasn't just another engagement won or lost. It was the end of an entire era of naval warfare. The age of the battleship duel was over, and the carrier had proven its supremacy. More than that, it marked the point of no return for the Japanese Empire in the Pacific. It was a brutal, sprawling, and decisive confrontation that changed the course of the war. If stories like these deepen your understanding of World War II's crucial turning points, consider subscribing for more untold battles and the stories of the people who should never be forgotten. Thanks for watching.